going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Must start and avoid running backs for week 7. I'll be taking a look at each game this week and going over the backfield situation for each team. If I don't answer your exact question in this video, you can see my rankings at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. Alright, week 7, this video goes up on Friday. So Kansas City has already played the Broncos. We also have 4 teams on bye. We've got the Panthers, Browns, Steelers, and Bucks. So if you got anyone from those teams, make sure you take them out of your lineup. For today's breakdown, let's start things off with the riveting game between the Bills and the Dolphins. Dolphins traveling to Buffalo for this one. The Bills are 16.5-point home favorites and actually have the second highest implied total of the week at 28.5 points. That's a lot for the Bills. The Dolphins are one of the largest run funnels in the league, not because they're good against the pass, they're terrible against the pass, but because teams know they can just go in there, run the ball every play, and win the game. They don't need to throw it, so they barely face any pass attempts. They're facing 36 carries per game, so this one sets up well for Gore to see in that 15 to 17 touch range and Singletary to see a little bit less, maybe that like 13 to 15 touch range. They're both viable flex options this week given the matchup, with Singletary coming with a little bit more upside and a little bit more potential to be used in the receiving game. On the Dolphins, it's less than ideal playing players on the road when their team's projected to score around 12 points. So the only viable running back is Kenyon Drake, and I'm calling him viable to be nice. You really should not be playing any running back on this team in Buffalo. Next game, Jaguars at Bengals. This game has a 43.5-point total, with the Jaguars currently 4-point road favorites. On the Jaguars side, start Fournette as always. Nice matchup, projected to win. He's a top 3 running back option this week. For the Bengals, this game quietly sets up as a decent spot for Mixon. He's at home. They're not supposed to win, but it's a 4-point spread, so it's not going to shock anyone if they have the lead for at least a good portion of the game. Plus, the Jaguars might sound like a scary defense, but they're allowing the 25th most yards per carry in the league. The problem is Mixon's offensive line. So, given that they're 4-point underdogs, the most likely game script is that they do end up leaning a little bit more pass heavy. Mixon's still a running back too because of the matchup and because of how talented he is, but know that his line is just dreadful. Vikings at Lions, and this is another game that's relatively easy to look at. We've got the Vikings, start Dalvin Cook whenever he's active, and you kind of have to keep Madison on the bench unless Cook is out or unless they're playing, I guess, like Washington and Miami. Then he's probably viable as a flex option, but they're not this week. The Lions are a solid defense, and they're in Detroit, so definitely just Dalvin Cook. For the Lions, they're only projected to lose by 1 point, and my model actually has them as 0.2 point favorites, so this game should be pretty close, and the Lions could come out with an upset here. It's certainly possible that the game script favors Kerryon Johnson. The problem is that the Vikings are an elite defense, right? So even if the Lions get up by 3, 4, 5 points and kind of try and hold a lead, it's not like they can just ground and pound with Kerryon Johnson. The Vikings are going to stop them. So he's a solid running back too with a decent amount of upside, and the only way you're not playing him is if you happen to have multiple running back ones, but I think most of you don't have that. Raiders at Packers now. So for the Raiders side, they're likely to try and lean on Josh Jacobs in this spot. Take a look at their wide receiver core. It's just embarrassing. And Tyrell Williams is not expected to play again. Plus, the Packers are better at defending wide receivers than any other position. So why on earth would they try and lean towards passing to them? So we should see Darren Waller and Jacobs be featured in this offense. His floor is obviously lower because of how little they like to use him in the receiving game, but he does have 5 receptions in his last 2 games, so that should at least give you a little bit more confidence towards his upside. I'd start him as a low-end running back 1, like basically the running back 11, 12, 13 kind of range, given this matchup. I'm not saying it's a great matchup against the Packers because the Packers are a good defense. But again, look at their wide receiver core. There's just no way they look at this matchup and go, yup, we're airing it out to these guys. They're going to try and give them a lot of touches, and that's good for fantasy. For the Packers, you got to start Aaron Jones, but you can't feel great about it. They are basically splitting the work evenly between him and Jamal Williams. Last week was not a fluke. He was, I guess you could say, quote unquote, benched for the fumble and for the drop touchdown, but he really didn't see that much of a decrease in his work. I don't think he was benched at all. They're going out there and saying, we want to split the work between both of these guys. Also, the Raiders are a much tougher matchup on the ground than most people think. So Aaron Jones is still a running back 2, given his red zone role. He's got nice touchdown upside, and because he's the more explosive back between the two. But Jamal Williams is viable in the flex, given how much they want to use them. It just stinks that they both eat into the other's production. Rams at Falcons is next, and this could be the game of the week. It's got the highest over-under at 54.5 points, with the Rams as 3-point road favorites, given that the Falcons have absolutely no idea how to play defense. For the Rams, this game depends entirely on Todd Gurley. I do expect them to air it out a lot. So you're obviously starting all the wide receivers. Jared Goff could legitimately throw for 450 yards in this one. But for the running backs, we just need to wait and see. I mean, right now, the indication is that Gurley is trending towards playing. But we're not going to know yet. We're hopefully going to get a nice indication on Friday, on Saturday, on Sunday morning of exactly how much they plan on using him. But who you start depends on those reports and what we hear Sunday morning. If it looks like he's gonna play and he's gonna see 60, 70% of snaps, well then I think you have to start him, and Malcolm Brown would be viable in the flex, but not a great flex option given that he would be the backup with a very small receiving game projection. If Gurley is gonna play, but every report seems to indicate that he's gonna be heavily limited, then you're starting Malcolm Brown and you're only starting Gurley if you're desperate and you just need to start him. If Gurley is out, he is not playing at all, then you're absolutely starting Malcolm Brown as a high-end running back 2 option given this matchup, and Darrell Henderson would be a viable flex play. But you're definitely only starting Henderson if Gurley's out, and again, Malcolm Brown and Gurley are just going to depend on what kind of news we get on Saturday and on Sunday. For the Falcons, Freeman's snap count has kind of been all over the place, but last week he dominated snaps over Ito, and in a projected shootout, you should be playing Freeman. He's historically better at home, and he has 3 receiving touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, so they are trying to get him the ball near the end zone. There's a very real chance both of these teams score into the 30s. So when in doubt, if you're deciding between 2 players, honestly, just go with the one playing in this game. I guess unless his name is Ito Smith, because, I mean, he's been over 7 touches once all season, and he only had 3 last week. So you're not starting Ito as a tiebreaker, but when in doubt, when deciding between 2 players, if one of them's in this game, I'd go with that player. Next game is Texans at Colts, and for the Texans, Carlos Hyde has at least 20 carries in 3 of his last 5 games, but he does nothing in the receiving game, so his floor is really low. I expect the Colts to win this one, and that would favor Houston's passing attack, not its ground game. So Hyde is fine in the flex, but he'll need a score to pay off, and I just never like playing running backs on teams I don't think are going to win, who don't have any sort of receiving game work. For the Colts, they would like to lean on Marlon Mack whenever they can, and this is a game where I expect them to try and do that. The Texans have a good run defense, but the Colts have a really good offensive line. So even though the Texans aren't bad against the run, I expect them to go out there and try and run the ball a ton. Mac should see around 20 touches in this game, and with the Colts projected to score around 24, 25 points, he has a decent shot to score as well. So I would start Mac as a solid running back 2 options, and I would not play any other Colts running back. 49ers at Washington is next. This game is not going to be close, and it's not going to be fun to watch. Washington isn't likely to get anything going on the ground, and the 49ers are content to just run the ball every play and just leave with the win. They do not care about passing, and they shouldn't in this one. For the 49ers, you should start both Coleman and Breida. Coleman is a legitimate running back 1 this week, basically a mid-range running back 1 this week, with Breida being a high-end running back 2 to a low-end running back 1. Coleman is already up to 7 green zone touches through 2.5 weeks and should see around 20 touches in this game, so it sets up well for him to have 100 and a touchdown. Breida is going to see around 3 to 4 fewer touches in this game than Coleman will, and he's not used nearly as much at the goal line. Remember what I said, remember what I tweeted out. Jeff Wilson was the goal line back. As soon as Coleman comes back, he takes over that role. So whenever they get close to the goal line, Coleman's going to come in. So he's got a massive touchdown projection in this one. For Washington, you can start Adrian Peterson in like a 16-team league, but not anything less than that. The 49ers are an elite defense, and Washington's going to struggle to score more than 10 to 13 points. So he could end up being viable if he happens to fall into the end zone, but it's going to come on like 14 carries for 40 yards, so you're going to get like 10 points even if he scores. Not worth it. Cardinals at Giants is next, and this actually could be a really nice game. Currently has the second highest total of the week. Been jumping between 50 down to 48, up to 51 I think I've seen, but I think it's around 50 right now. But it should be a good game. The Giants are currently 3-point home favorites. For the Cardinals, you're starting David Johnson every single week that he's active. Last week it was a little bit scary. It was looking like maybe he might miss, but then he goes out there. He scores multiple touchdowns. He looks like David Johnson. So when he's out there, you're starting him. They are trying to get Chase Edmonds more involved in the game plan, but he's still not getting enough work to be viable starting outside of like 14 or 16 team leagues. However, he should be owned everywhere. For the Giants, it looks like Saquon's going to be active this week, so play him if he is. If he's not active, I guess you could play whoever they're going to start in place of him, but I really do think he's going to play. So crossing my fingers because I need him to play, but I think he's going to be out there, so definitely start him. Next game is Chargers at Titans, and for the Chargers side, last week Melvin Gordon was given 11 touches on 60% of snaps, while Eckler had 8 touches on 45% of snaps. So they did give Gordon more snaps, more touches, and they've indicated they want it to be that way. I don't see Gordon ever really passing like 65-70% of the snaps, and I do think they're still going to keep Eckler involved in the game plan moving forward more as a receiving back than on the ground, which is fine for us in fantasy. This game has an extremely low over-under, and the Titans have a really good defense, so it's not a great spot for either of these running backs. And it's typically a negative EV strategy to play a road dog running back when his team's only projected to score around 20 points. If you want to start them, you can do it in the flex, but I really don't like either of these guys, even as a running back 2 this week. For the Titans, start Derrick Henry every single week. Even with this quarterback change, I expect them to lean on him, get him his 20 touches, and his splits when his team wins are scary good. So they might not win this one, but they're projected to do so. Their odds are better this week than it is most weeks, so he's a low-end running back 1. Next game, Saints at Bears, and this one should be gross. It's got the lowest over-under on the week at 38.5 points, and there's a chance that Kamara misses as well. He hasn't practiced through Wednesday. I guess we'll see what happens today that I'm recording. I guess we'll see what happens on Friday and on Saturday. If he plays, then you basically have to start him. He's Alvin Kamara. Just don't expect him to do a whole lot, and he'd be more of a running back 2. And if you could bench him, saying that you are lucky and you have 2 running back 1s, you could go for it. If he's out, then Latavius Murray becomes viable in the flex. But again, we don't expect a whole lot from running backs when they play in Chicago. On the Chicago side, David Montgomery is technically a home favorite running back against an average run defense, so you could start him saying that, I guess. But they're only projected to score 21, and they're barely favorites, and they've looked pretty bad on offense. So this game, like I said, not going to be a fun one to watch, but you could start Montgomery in the flex or in the running back 2 spot if you really need it, but he's really just a touchdown or bust play this week, and no other running back is viable on the Bears. Ravens at Seahawks is next, and for the Ravens, they're 3.5 point road underdogs, which is less than ideal as a running back. Ingram is the top option since he gets basically all of the goal line work, but he's a touchdown or bust running back 2 this week. Seattle's an average run defense, and he's only going to be getting his 1 or 2 targets each week, and he's been playing a very, very soft running back schedule so far. On the Seattle side, Penny isn't listed on the injury report right now, although we know late last week he suffered a setback. So you got to keep watching the injury reports, keep watching Sunday morning, because Sunday morning we saw Penny be inactive, which really increased Carson's value last week. This week, we expect Penny to play, but like I just said, he could suffer a setback, plus he's coming off the injury. So do we expect him to go out there and get 15 touches? Absolutely not. So you're definitely not starting Penny, but also look at Carson, basically the same as he has been over the last month. Maybe Penny takes a few touches here and there throughout the game, but don't expect him to have any sort of real role. So you are starting Carson as a running back 1. The matchup is difficult, but not impossible by any means, especially as a home favorite in the 3rd highest projected scoring game of the week. For Sunday Night Football, we've got the Eagles at the Cowboys, and for the Eagles, Miles Sanders is the preferred option given his passing game role and the fact that Howard doesn't even have a target since week 4, but neither are more than a flex play this week, just praying that one of them falls into the end zone. I mean, they're road underdogs, splitting the workload, and despite that 4 touchdown game from Aaron Jones, the Cowboys are a decent run defense. For the Cowboys, obviously start Zeke every single week, but know that the Eagles are the league's most difficult run matchup, so don't expect a monster day unless he gets lucky and falls into the end zone a few times. The final game of the week is Monday Night Football with the Patriots at the Jets. And on the Patriots side, they are 10-point road favorites, but they're projected to score fewer points than they normally do. The Jets have an above-average run defense, and Sony Michel has looked pretty mediocre on the ground this season. Better as of late, and it's nice that they're finally using him in the passing game. It's been crazy that they've just refused to do so far this season and last season as a rookie, but he's a low-end running back 2 to flex play this week, and just you're kind of watching this game hoping that that trend continues. Know that Rex Burkhead's been out, so it's possible that goes away. It's possible he loses a few touches, he loses that receiving game work, and if that happens, he's got a very, very low floor in this matchup. Someone who's not really that affected by Rex Burkhead is James White. He would see a few less targets, but he's already getting no work on the ground, so Burkhead's return would really just siphon touches away from Sony Michel and like 1 or 2 targets away from James White. This is more of a James White game. The Patriots are more likely to use him over Sony Michel And he's been getting really unlucky in the touchdown department, talking about James White there. So I do expect him to score soon, and I do expect him to have a usable game as a low-end running back to flex play. For the Jets, you're starting Le'Veon Bell in every single matchup, but you're really just hoping for a bunch of dump-offs. And I'm actually a little bit concerned about the one target last week. We'll see if that's a trend that's going to continue with Sam Darnold back, but just keep an eye out for exactly how involved he is in the receiving game this week, because Darnold barely even looked his way last week. But again, it's Le'Veon Bell. He's going to play basically every snap, so you have to start him. So that's everything you should need answered at the running back position for week 7. If you have any questions that I did not answer in this video, then just look at my exact rankings at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But that's the end of this one. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? And if you're new here, how about subscribing to the channel? But thanks for watching.